Morning, David Hooper here, Morning Rounds. Today I'm going to get into what's next, because I think people are always trying to go, what's next, what's going to happen next? And we're seeing here, in America at least, the cases are significantly dropping with COVID. We're looking to get back to a normal sort of state, which a lot of literally states are getting back to normal. And we're either at or approaching some sort of herd immunity, which is why cases are dropping. But I think what people should consider, that even though things are dropping, there's other factors involved, which is temperature. Things are outside a little more. We're not as closed in. It's the spring into the summer. So pretty much all transmissible upper respiratory infections decrease around this time, besides the old sinus issues from allergy problems. But that's another factor. So the trend would normally be for things to drop off at this time. So it doesn't mean that we're at this herd immunity status. Could we be getting closer to it? Yeah, obviously, from vaccines and from people that have had infection. So we're probably approaching that 50 to 60% range, which definitely helps. There's statistical data showing once you get near the 60% rate, cases will drop because it makes transmission more difficult. So, but also, if you were one of the ones that were on the fence, well, if I haven't got my vaccine yet, things are looking good, I'm just going to hold off for now. So COVID's not going anywhere. Like, it's not gone. If you haven't had it and you haven't had a vaccine, come wintertime, come when there's more stuff going around, you can still get it. So it's not going to be as prevalent. The prevalence is going to decrease for sure, but it's still out there. So if you're okay with living with that threat of, ongoing threat, which it will be if you haven't had it, so that will return. There will be more coming. I don't think it's going to be a change in, all the variant problem. It's just a matter of, if 60% are protected, that means 40% still aren't. So if you're in that 40%, you can still get it. It's not gone. It's just not as prevalent. So don't think that just because things look good and things are trending down and everything's looking good that it's not gonna make a little resurgence, because I would think, unfortunately, that come next year, next winter, there's going to be more, because there's still a lot of people that can't get infected. So it's a lot less percent, it's a smaller percentage on the system, so we're not going to see the volumes from it, but the threat is still going to be there. So that's just something to think about if you're still on the fence. If you're okay with just living with it, just live with it. Be okay with it. But if you're going to be concerned when you start hearing more about it, you're going to be right back in the same position. Maybe just get the vaccine and be done with it. But take all the other risks involved as well. I've done videos on that too. So the other thing that I was just thinking about is the kids factor. The fact that the kids aren't really as impacted by this, and you're going to see stuff that says kids don't transmit it. What contagious disease do kids not transmit? None. They transmit everything. They're like little cesspools of germs, and that's just what kids do. So obviously kids can spread it to each other. I think there's so many asymptomatic cases with kids that it seems like they don't spread it. It's my theory behind it. And kids are also back and forth and all over the place, so they're not in people's faces for prolonged periods. Maybe that's a factor, but I'm sure it's getting spread, and it's just not doing a whole lot with the kids. seem to do much better with it. So saying that they can't spread it, it doesn't seem like their viral load is enough to spread it to other adults, which is a good thing. So they're obviously dealing with it better than adults do for the most part. So I think kids can have, obviously, and can spread it to each other. It's just they don't get that sick, so it doesn't appear that way. So that's kind of my take. I don't see any other, just because we look good here in America, but those other countries, because they don't have much of a status on vaccines or herd immunity building up, that they're getting pummeled by this. Still, take India, for example. It's horrible there. And so it's still, when it's in other countries, now they're going to blame it on the India variant, whatever you want to call it. If you hear that term, it's always changing. Viruses are always changing. There's always little mutations that are going to happen. That's 100% always. So certain variants are going to be more prevalent, and then they're going to change. And it's always changing. But they're not seeing anything breaking through, looking like it can't be stopped with previous infection or the vaccines. So therefore it doesn't really matter. It's business as usual. So that's what I think on that. And I think they were at like 8 to 9% actually vaccination in India. So they had some, not much though, minimal. That's just because of a recent surge in vaccinations there. Before it was less than that. So I think it's running its course, and this is going to continue to run its course. It's not over, and it's going to keep going. And all the countries, this is a big thing too, the countries like Australia, New Zealand, that are just sitting back and protecting their borders and not doing anything, and really not even having much of a vaccine campaign, they're still just as vulnerable as they were a year ago, and acting like they're just prolonging this. So either they're waiting for a vaccination, or I don't know what the plan is when you just draw out the end result, because they're all still vulnerable and they're just in this steady lockdown state basically. And I don't know what the end goal is with that. People are going to knock USA because we didn't have, we didn't protect everything. We didn't lock down forever like many of these countries did. But the longer you lock down, guess what? You're still vulnerable. You're still just as easy to get sick. So you can go either way. We took some ways of managing our flow, lowering the curve as we called it. But then we kind of played that little open up not game, more closed than open it up. But it's still going to keep spreading across the world because the vaccines haven't spread across the world, and COVID hasn't spread across the world because everybody's sheltered up and quarantined still. So as soon as they're out, and as soon as they start going, it's going to start spreading there, and they're going to blame it on another variant. This just seems like that's what we like to do, blame the variants now. And that's just because they haven't had exposures. They need exposures. Either it's going to spread naturally, you're going to build a natural immunity, or you're going to build a vaccine immunity. There's no other way to stop a pandemic. It will run its course, and it is running its course. So you got one of two options. Quarantine is delaying the inevitable. It doesn't just stop. I don't know where, and they keep thinking that's going to happen. Slows things down. It's like slowing down a fire that you can't put out. You're closing everything down, you're limiting the oxygen the fire can have, but it's still going to burn. And then you give it more oxygen, it's going to take off. or the vaccine's kind of like something that can stop, like I use the analogy, wet trees. A vaccine, if you've either had the infection, you've had COVID, or you've had a vaccine, you're that wet bush or that wet tree amongst other dry trees. So if you don't want to get burned, you either have to have got lucky and already had it and didn't have any problems with it, or maybe you did have it and you did have problems with it, but you're okay and you're getting better, but you're safe at this point, and carry on. So you can't stop the fire. It's gonna burn, and it's burning everywhere across the world. So that's it. I mean, you gotta open the doors at some point, unless they're just waiting on vaccine. They're gonna vaccinate. I don't know, but it's gonna be a back and forth thing. We have more vaccines than we can use, which is a strange thing. Why we bought hundreds of millions of doses when we only have 330 million people in our country, and people that are under 18 or under 16, whatever they're saying now, can't get vaccinated anyway. So that probably puts us at 250 million people, or 275 million. Why do we need 600 million doses? That's the strange thing about it too. Why don't we give those away? Give them to countries that need them, or sell them, whatever. I don't know. That's politics for you, and I'm no politician. But y'all have a good day. I'm out of here.